Yugioh GX boss monsters. Every duelist has that one uber powerful card they spend the whole duel trying to summon. Typically, it's either the ultimate card that they bring out towards the end of the duel that they push for game with, or alternatively, it's the monster they summon as soon as possible, forcing the opponent to deal with it before it deals with them. Now, some characters, their boss monsters change throughout the course of the show. As they get better, their boss monsters get better. For others, their boss monsters, well, they might have a few of them. Different cards for different situations. Today, we're gonna go through every single boss monster every single Yu-Gi-Oh! GX character has. And if you know Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, you know there's a lot of characters. So please subscribe because this took a long time to make. Jaden Yuki. Now, as the main character of the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX series, Jaden had a lot of boss monsters. They were ever changing. There were multiple of them at one point in time, and there was bigger and bigger ones we get towards the end of the series. However, if we go in order, I think Jaden's first ever boss monster that we see is, of course, the elemental hero Flame Wingman, which is a fusion of Bastinatrix and Avion. If it destroys a monster, you can deal damage to the opponent. It's a great boss monster to have, and fun fact, it's Jaden's favorite card. However, I actually think this isn't the only boss monster for the original season. I think every single one of Jaden's fusions are a boss monster. Every week there'd be a new enemy to face. Jaden would have to get out of this tough situation, this unique position he's found himself in. And to do that, he needs a new monster. So we get new stuff like Mudball Man, Rampart Blaster, Thunder Giant, Blade Edge? No, it's not called Blade Edge. That one, Wild Edge. Wild Edge, that's the one. However, there is one that stands above all the rest, his ultimate boss monster, and I would say that is Shining Flare Wingman. It's the biggest monster he can make from his original fusion monsters. It's made by making Flame Wingman fused with Sparkman. It has all of the original Flame Wingman's abilities, except now it gains attack for every elemental hero in the graveyard. It's a great card, and it was one of the biggest monsters he made to go up against Zane's ultimate boss monster, so I think this makes sense as his earliest ultimate boss monster, really. Following on from this season, when Jaden gets his Neospacians, we get an exact repeat of the elemental heroes. Every single one of Jaden's Neospacian fusions is his new boss monster to deal with different situations. Elemental hero Dark Neos, elemental hero Grand Neos, elemental hero Redacted Neos, like all these different things can deal with all these different situations. However, there is a tier system to this. There is an ultimate version, and there's actually a couple of them. I think all of his triple contact fusions are his ultimate boss monsters. So this would be elemental hero Magma Neos, Chaos Neos, and Storm Neos. And while we're in here as well, I want to throw an honorable mention out there to elemental hero Electrum. This is a fusion monster of 4 hero monsters. So I think this is one of the bigger monsters that he had, and I think you could class this as one of those ultimate tier boss monsters. Its effect isn't great, but it kind of was powerful, so I guess you could class that as an ultimate boss. Believe it or not, after the boss monsters, the ultimate boss monsters, there is actually a tier above all of this as ultimate god level boss monster, and that is literally the god elemental hero Neospacian himself, elemental hero Divine Neos. This is the ultimate monster. It is a fusion of Neos and basically every single one of his Neospacian monsters. He uses it in his final big duel against the Darkness, and it is the card to win against the final villain of the series. So this is, of course, his ultimate boss monster card. However, I'm going to do 2 more cards. I think collaboration boss monsters, these are 2 things I want to include. 1, collaboration boss monster with Jesse Anderson, Rainbow Neos, collaboration with Yubel, Neos Wiseman. So I think these 2 also count as boss monsters, but with collaborations with other characters. Supreme King. Now, while Jaden was evil, he had evil heroes. So what was his evil hero boss cards? Well, I think there's 2 of them. I want to say it's Super Polymerization, because this card is nuts. A bunch of people had to get sacrificed to make this card. It's a quick play fusion spell that cannot be responded to in any way, shape, or form, and you get to fuse using your opponent's side of the field. That's kind of crazy. However, I think when I did my Ace Monsters video thing, I put this more as the Ace card of the Supreme King, which I think does make more sense. So, who would I give the boss monster slot to? Well, like Jaden and his elemental heroes and Neospatians, evil heroes have quite a few different fusions. So you could say all of the fusions are boss monsters. But if I was going to put an ultimate boss monster for his evil heroes, I definitely would give it to his evil hero Malicious Fiend. It's the biggest monster he can make with 3500 attack and has a devastating ability that if the opponent enters their battle phase, all of their monsters switch into attack and slam into this monster. Most likely they'll be weaker, so they'll all just destroy themselves and the opponent will take a ton of damage. This isn't actually a great ability because your opponent can just choose not to go into the battle phase, but still pretty strong. Cyrus Truesdale. So initially, Cyrus Truesdale's boss monster is his Super Vehicroid line of cards. He doesn't have that many of them, but they're the fusions that are a step above his other fusions. And the first one that comes to mind is Super Vehicroid Jumbo Drill. This card is essentially a crapper version of Zane's Cyber End Dragon, his older brother, because it requires 3 monsters to be summoned. It's got 1000 less attack than Cyber End Dragon, and it can do piercing battle damage, and it can be made through Power Bond, but it's just not quite as good. So I think the step above this I would go with is probably Super Vehicroid Stealth Union as his true ultimate Vehicroid boss monster. It is essentially Zane's Cyber End Dragon and Cyber Twin Dragon thrown together because it does piercing battle damage. It can attack twice if it equips an opponent's monster or any monster to itself. It gains that monster's abilities onto itself. However, when it attacks, its attack points are halved until the end of the battle phase, which is a really wacky, detrimental ability to put onto this card, considering how hard it is to get out. Vehicroids, am I right? However, we're not done because Cyrus absorbed his brother's deck, the Cyber Dark deck, in the final season. So his new ultimate boss monster became Cyber Dark Dragon. Cyrus was the one to master the Cyber Dark style of dueling, so he was given this deck at the end of the series. Cyber Dark Dragon, it can equip a dragon monster from either graveyard to itself to boost its attack points, and then for every card in the graveyard, it gains an additional 100 attack, and then if it would be destroyed, you can destroy the card equipped to it instead. And if I'm going to throw out a collaboration monster, Jaden and Cyrus's collaboration monster is UFO Roid Fighter, which is just a Roid monster fused with a warrior, which Jaden plays a lot of them, and it's just got high stats. That's kind of it. Chaz Princeton. Chaz goes through a lot of different decks. He takes a while to find his identity, and he's kind of he plays a bit of everything kind of thing. So when we first meet Chaz, he's playing a Hell deck, and probably the boss monster of that deck was his Infernal Incinerator. It's nothing too impressive, but for early Yu-Gi-Oh! In the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX series against Jaden, this was a formidable enemy for him to go against. However, after he got upgraded and given the VWXYZ cards, of course, in his VWXYZ deck, it's their ultimate fused form, VWXYZ Dragon Catapult Cannon, which is not only a mouthful to say, but it's a really good card. This was a great boss monster for him. Following this, he got his Armed Dragon cards. So with his Armed Dragon deck, what was his ultimate boss monster? It was Armed Dragon level 10. And we're still not done. When Chaz got his Ojama cards, what was his ultimate boss monster then? Well, it was Ojama King, which is not a strong monster, but with all the equips and spells that he plays to support this monster, it becomes really formidable. And obviously, towards the end of the series, these 3 decks basically all merge together into one super deck. So Ojama King, Armed Dragon level 10, and VWXYZ Dragon Catapult Cannon all became boss monsters together in a singular deck, but we're not done. Chaz became evil for a little while, joining the Society of Light. When he did, he played a White Knight deck. That is White Knights as in knights, swords. I'm going to point that out because Alexis also joined the Society of Light and also played a White Knight deck, but it was White Knight as in, oh, it's dark now at night time, which I always thought was quite funny. But anyway, he abandons his cards for this deck, and his new boss monster is White Knight Lord. Bastion Masawa. One of the most criminally underused characters, someone that had like, what do you have, like 7 decks altogether, 1 for each attribute, and we saw what, 1 or 2 of them altogether? Pretty terrible. So for his water attribute deck, I think was his first one, that ultimate boss monster of that was his Water Dragon, which was made using a spell called Bonding H2O, merging his 2 Hydrogeddons and 1 Oxygeddon. H2O, very clever. And that was his boss monster for that. We later see him with an Earth-themed deck, which was his Magnet deck. And his boss monster in that was instead Conduction Warrior, Linear Magnum, plus minus, I think the last bit of it called. But pretty strong card. It's just been made into the real world recently. Alexis Rhodes. Now, another character that was criminally underused was Alexis Rhodes, the Madonna of Duel Academy, I think she was described as. She played a Cyber Angel deck. I think her first boss monster we get introduced to is probably a Fusion Cyber Blader. This was the card she used against Jaden, and it was all right. It wasn't great or anything, but I think when she started leaning more heavily into her ritual monsters and she started playing these Cyber Angels, Cyber Angel Dakini, I would say, was probably the biggest ritual she had. I mean, she had like Ben 10 and Itoden and stuff, but Dakini was the biggest one with the best effect out of the three. So I think Dakini would probably serve as her ultimate boss monster for the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX series. However, I did say earlier, she had a White Knight deck, and when she was in the Society Light, that deck had a boss monster, which was White Knight Dragon. Chumley Huffington. Chumley didn't stick around for very long, which I think is fine. I thought the main cast was a little bit bloated anyway, but Chumley had an Australian themed deck. And his boss monster was actually huge. It was Master of Oz, a fusion of, oh god, I can't remember the name. Big Koala, which I used to really like as a kid. It was one of my favorite early cards I had that was really strong. And the kangaroo looking thing with boxing gloves. Master Oz is just huge. It's a massive monster. It's a pretty big boss monster to have. So that was Chumley's boss monster. Asta Phoenix. Asta went through, I think, a few boss monsters. So initially when we first got introduced to him, he's playing a hero deck, an elemental hero deck. And his ultimate boss monster in that deck is his elemental hero Shining Phoenix Enforcer, which is a parallel to Jaden's elemental hero Shining Flare Wingman. They both are made for the same materials, but there's a diverging path in what they make. This guy isn't great. I don't know why you would want to play this, because it gains attack just like Shining Flare Wingman for every monster in the graveyard, so it can get huge, but it just can't be destroyed by battle, which if you've got a monster that has overwhelming stats, does it really matter if it can't be destroyed by battle? It's not a great card, but it is technically his first boss monster. Following this, when we start seeing the Destiny heroes, Destiny Hero Dreadmaster, I would say, is his boss monster. You have to summon it through Clock Tower Prison, wait a couple turns. This thing comes out, it gains the attack of all the other Destiny heroes on the field. It is absolutely huge. You can go for game with it, so that makes sense. However, we get a monster later called Destiny Hero Dogma, which I think was Asta's placeholder ultimate boss monster until he got his true boss monster. By the way, this card's effect is, I think it just halves your opponent's life points. Pretty powerful ability. But his true boss monster, the real one, is Destiny Hero Plasma. This was the card that his dad made and died for, and was stolen by somebody we're going to talk about a little bit later on this list. But this card has the ability to just absorb an opponent's monster, and then the opponents can't do anything because it just floodgates them. It's a very powerful card, and we actually got a ultimate boss monster by fusing Dogma and Plasma together to make Destiny End Dragoon, which is absolutely insanely strong. Zane Truesdale. Now for Zane, his mini boss, I would say, is Cyber Twin Dragon. You can absolutely go for game with this card. Double attack, 2800 attack, 5600 damage, summon it with Power Bomb. That's 5600 attack times 2 attacks. That's insanely powerful. But his real heavy hitter was his Cyber End Dragon, a 4000 attack monster made using 3 Cyber Dragons. Summoned through Power Bond, it'd have 8000 attack. If you've only got 4000 life points in a duel, you are not surviving any attack this card dishes out. It is an absolute powerhouse. But Zane didn't stop there. Of course, he absorbed the Underworld deck, which never a huge fan of. But of course, Cyber Dark Dragon became his new boss monster in that. And it replaced Cyber End for a little while, but I think after a point, probably towards the Other Dimension arc, Cyber Dark and Cyber End became equal kind of boss monsters for him. And I just want to do an honorable mention to Zane's Chimera Tech monsters. These were like out-of-pocket bosses that if worst comes to worst, he pulls them out. And these were Chimera Tech Overdragon and Chimera Tech Fortress Dragon. Atticus Rhodes. Atticus played a Red Eyes Black Dragon deck. Initially, his ultimate boss monster was Red Eyes Black Dragon. However, after he got mind possessed by the darkness, this got upgraded into Red Eyes Darkness Dragon. And then that got upgraded into its ultimate form, Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon. So this was the ultimate power of Atticus Rhodes' deck. But when he gets rid of the darkness, he kind of rejects the darkness aspects of his deck, and he just plays pure Red Eyes Black Dragon. So Atticus on his own, Red Eyes Black Dragon. Atticus with darkness imbued powers, Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon. Yusuke Fujiwara. One of the victims of the Abandoned Dorm incident, he also was possessed by the darkness, had his power flow through him and everything. He absorbed a clear deck, and the ultimate boss monster of that deck was Clear Vice Dragon. In the real world, it's not a great card. In the anime, it was fine. Basically, it'd always be the strongest monster when it attacks, and it's attributeless. So Clear World, the field spell which punishes monsters with attributes, it's not punished. It's a cool card, but in the modern day, in the real world, it should have a little bit of an upgrade. Jesse Anderson. Jesse Anderson's ultimate boss monster is one of the easiest people to pick this for because he played a Crystal Beast deck. He had all of his Crystal Beasts, and when all of those Crystal Beasts have been on the field or in the graveyard, he can summon his ultimate boss monster. He didn't have it for the first few episodes he appeared in, but when he got it, Rainbow Dragon was his ultimate boss monster. 4,000 attack, absolute powerhouse, absolutely amazing card. And when, unfortunately, he got possessed by Yubel and became Jesse Yubel, Rainbow Dragon got converted into Rainbow Dark Dragon. So this became the new boss monster for evil Jesse. And then obviously when he went back to being good, went back to good Rainbow Dragon. And we've already talked about the collaboration monster, Rainbow Neos, between him and Jaden. But yeah, that was Jesse Anderson. Axel Brody. Axel played a volcanic deck. It's all about burn, burn, burn. So what's his ultimate boss monster? Volcanic Doomfire, which is the representation of his father, all about survival and using what is available to you and making correct decisions and stuff. This monster, it can only be summoned by getting rid of Tri-Blaze Accelerator, and it just does burn. It burns and it's a heavy hitter. That's basically the gist of it. Blair Flanagan. Now, Blair is one we don't see duel very much, but we know is a good duelist. When she's first introduced, she's like snuck into Duel Academy. She's pretending to be like a boy and she's pretending to be older than she is or something. I actually can't remember the plot. But she was playing a Maiden in Love deck. She was in love with Zane Truesdale, I do believe. So her boss monster was Maiden in Love. And then I think she started liking Jaden after that arc. And then when we see her later in the Gen X tournament, she's playing a Mystic deck. And the boss monster of that deck was Mystic Dragon, which has never been printed. This could be a real thing. It's kind of cool. Pretty strong. So she is very similar to a girl from Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters called Rebecca Hawkins. They fill the same kind of character role, don't they? And they both have a deck with dragons towards the end of their series. So yeah, and it's Mystic Dragon compared to whatever the Gem Dragon, I think it was called, in her deck. Jim Crocodile Cook. Now, I want to go as far as to say Jim Crocodile Cook with his Fossil deck, the way it works is he uses Fossil Fusion. He can fuse with his deceased monsters and the opponent's deceased monsters to make a variety of different things. So all of his fusions, I think, are viable for the position of boss monster, but there are two in particular that I think are ultimate boss monsters, and these are Fossil Warrior Skull King. I think this is the true boss monster of the deck. Very, very strong. And as well, Fossil Dragon Skull Gios. It's just the ultimate form of skeleton dinosaur. It just looks really cool. So I think these two are his ultimate boss monsters. Yubel. Now we have three versions of Yubel. Original Yubel, pure. Her ultimate boss monster is, of course, the final version of herself. Yubel, the ultimate nightmare. When she's possessing someone called Marcel Bonaparte, she plays a Exodia deck and a Sacred Beast deck. So Exodia the Forbidden One with Marcel, Armityle the Chaos Phantom also as Marcel as well. I think he did play with it in the Jesse duel as well. So yeah, I guess Jesse also is Armityle the Chaos Phantom, but also with Jesse Yubel, Rainbow Dark Dragon. She played a lot of different spooky decks, so pretty cool for Yubel. Yami Yugi. Yes, you heard that right. Yami Yugi appeared in the final episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, and what was his ultimate boss monster? Well, it was, of course, Slifer the Sky Dragon. This was the Egyptian god he got out on the final turn, and unfortunately the duel never got concluded, so we didn't get to see how the duel went. However, we do see at the start of that duel that all three god cards are in his deck. So all three Egyptian god cards are Yami Yugi's ultimate boss monster in that final duel. Gerard. Now, it seems a bit weird to go from Yami Yugi to who's Gerard? Well, it's the dude that's like trying to get a scoop on Duel Academy, and he watches Jaden duel and he sees Jaden play Skyscraper, and he has like a flashback to his younger days where he used to love Yu-Gi-Oh. Apparently, he used to play a hero deck too, an elemental hero deck, and he had Skyscraper in his deck. Skyscraper is the only card we know this person has, so I'm just gonna say his boss card was Skyscraper, because why not? And fun fact, do you know who he lost to? Seto Kaiba. So since Seto Kaiba technically is in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, what was his ultimate boss monster? Well, Seto Kaiba, his ultimate boss monster was Blue Eyes White Dragon, not ultimate Blue Eyes White Dragon? No, because we only see him for like a split second, and he has Blue Eyes White Dragon in the field. I don't know if he still plays Ultimate Dragon anymore, so Blue Eyes White Dragon is that. If you want to see Ultimate Blue Eyes White Dragon, well, Kaiba Man. Kaiba Man is the spirit version of Kaiba. He must have had a card commissioned of himself and it became sentient and became a real thing, and it goes around teaching duelists to have fun and enjoy duels again, I think. And his ultimate boss monster was, you guessed it, Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon. He used this card to clap Jaden with, basically. Next up, we've got the Shadow Riders. We've already done Atticus, so what about these guys? Abydos III. His boss monster was Spirit of the Pharaoh. Do not play this deck, it is terrible. Camula. Her boss monster in her vampire deck was Vampire Genesis, which, if you know, was the boss monster for one of the earliest structure decks. It's not great, but it does let you special summon zombie monsters back every now and then. Meh. Tanya. Tanya played an Amazoness deck. She didn't really have a boss monster, but if I had to give it to anything, Amazoness Swordswoman, I guess, or Amazoness Tiger, because she was Amazoness Tiger, right, if I remember correctly. One of those. Don Zalug. Don Zalug didn't really have an ultimate boss monster either, but I will say that all 5 of his Dark Scorpion monsters were his boss cards. However, if I had to pick one in particular, I'd actually give it to the card Dark Scorpion Combination, because this facilitated, I think, a win condition for his deck. So Dark Scorpion Combination, or just all the Dark Scorpions, to be honest with you. Titan. Titan played a Archfiend deck, and it mainly revolved around Terra King Archfiend. And then when we see him again in the later season, I would say it was replaced by a monster called Matador Fiend as his new boss monster. Amnael. Amnael played a homunculus deck, and he had a bunch of like Helios cards. It's hard to say. Is Helios the primordial sun? Whichever one the biggest of the Helios cards are, I'll put a picture of it here. It could be that, but I think his true win condition was the golden homunculus. This was the card that he wanted to win with. So yeah, I'd say golden homunculus for Amnael. Kagamaru. Kagamaru always wanted to obtain all 3 of the sacred beasts to make him young again and healthy. And so when he finally got all 3, what was his ultimate boss monster? It was all 3 of the sacred beasts. Herman, Uriah, and Raviel. Forgot the names then for a second. Admiral. Who's Admiral? He's a ship captain character. We're gonna get to some of the wacky spin-off 1 episode characters coming up, so get ready for that. But what was his boss monster? Well, obviously, sea-themed deck. His monster was Levia Dragon Daedalus, which is actually a pretty decent card. Alice, the spooky doll girl. What was her boss monster? She actually played a doll deck. So she's Doll Chimera was her boss monster. When that failed, she had a backup plan with a card called Ashila the Lovely Bisque Doll. Bob Banter. This is a wacky one. So Bob Banter plays a really unorthodox deck that would never work in the real world, because the monsters are all quiz panels. You set them face down. When they're flipped up, the opponent has to answer a question or do a task, which is like hold your breath underwater for like 60 seconds or something, or answer questions. But the problem with, I guess, the questions is if it's a general knowledge question, if someone ever played that deck against you again, you'd know how to answer it. So that's kind of the problem. But what was his boss monster in that? It's a hard one to say. Nothing was really a boss. I guess Quiz Hour, maybe, if I had to give it to any of them, because it shuffled everything back. Or was that the trap? I can't remember. Or maybe just all the quiz panels. Yeah. Blaze and Frost. Blaze and Frost were a tag team duo that dueled against Cyrus and Tyrone Hasselbury. Fun fact, Tyrone Hasselbury and Cyrus actually lost this duel, but the deck that they played was more or less a Monarch deck. So Blaze's boss monster was Festalos the Firestorm Monarch, and Frost's boss monster was Mobius the Frost Monarch. So these 2 monsters helped them achieve victory, which Monarch's a great card, so pretty sweet. Jean-Louis Bonaparte. Bonaparte played a toy deck, and the strongest monster he had in that deck was Toy Emperor. He didn't duel that often, but this is the card he tended to get out the most. Velian Crowler. Crowler, of course, played Ancient Gears, and the ultimate boss monster for the earlier parts of the season was Ancient Gear Golem. 3k attack, your opponent can't respond when you go for attacks, and does piercing battle damage. It's crazy powerful. But when we get to the final season of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, it got a big upgrade into Ultimate Ancient Gear Golem. 4400 attack, piercing battle damage, can't respond when it attacks, and can also float into a Ancient Gear Golem when it's destroyed. Pretty good. Chancellor Shepherd. Chancellor Shepherd played a cyber deck, similar to Zane Truesdale. They went to school together, or I think Zane was the pupil of that for the cyber style of dueling. Chancellor Shepherd's ultimate cyber boss monster was Cyber Ogre number 2, which was a fusion monster. It was fine. It's just not great because it lost to Zane anyway. Duel Giant. The Duel Giant was 2 characters. It was the dumb but strong guy and the smart but weak guy, and they stood on each other's shoulders and pulled coats around them. Sorry, I forgot their names. But their boss monsters, they played a Goblin deck, so it's hard to say what their actual boss was. I'm going to say Goblin King had the biggest potential for attack points, so that's probably their boss, right? But we also have Giant Orc, maybe as the representation of the bigger dudes, his boss monster, and then Second Goblin as the small dude as his boss monster, and then you combine those two together and you get a powerful combination. So yeah. Jasmine and Mindy, the friends of Alexis Rhodes that you see duel for just the briefest of seconds. Their boss monsters are Mermaid Knight and Rescue Cat. Why these cards? Because they're the only cards they played. Dr. Collector. Dr. Collector played like a spellcaster lockdown deck. It was actually kind of cool. His boss monster, I guess, was the card that was dealing the most damage. It's not a very strong card, but Iban Magician Karan would probably be the only thing I could class as his boss monster. He played the Valkyrie cards as well, but that just sort of kept him alive. So I would say it was Iban Magician Karan. Dark Magician Girl. Dark Magician Girl also used a spellcaster lockdown, sort of banish your opponent's cards and things like that kind of deck. But her boss monster is, of course, it's the Dark Magician Girl. This is what she's working towards getting out. So yeah, and if we're staying on the duel monsters that are duelists kind of route, next we have Jinzo. Jinzo came to life in a spooky, I forgot the reason why he came to life. Was it lightning? Lightning hit something and he just, anyway, Jinzo's boss monsters, of course, Jinzo. Jinzo stops all traps from being used on the field. However, we're not done. There was a character that actually used the Jinzo deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, and that was Makoto Inatsume. His boss monster wasn't Jinzo. It was the upgraded form of Jinzo, Jinzo Lord, and he used this to fight against Cyrus. Fought against Cyrus and Zane. It's unclear whether he would have beat Zane. I think Zane would have won if his heart didn't give out and everything, but yeah, he put up a really good fight with this monster. Belowski, the far out duelist man. He played a Moki deck. Moki, if I remember that right from the show. Basically weak, but they could be boosted through getting angry. And they had a fused form, which was Moki King, and this was the card that he was pushing for game with. Mad Dog. My least favorite dubbed voice in the entire Yu-Gi-Oh! GX franchise. I summon my flying token! And it's like a huge dude. Doesn't make any sense. He played a slime deck. I don't really know what his boss monster was. He played lots of little things, and he basically wanted to do loads of chip damage and stuff. I've had to give it to a card. I don't know how he knew he'd be going against a machine duelist, but Last Machine Acid Virus was the card he was using to get the win condition against Zane with, really. He was punishing Zane for all his machine monsters and making them rust and everything. So yeah, I'd say that would be his boss card. The D. The D was the guy who killed Asta Phoenix's dad and took Destiny Hero Plasma. I forget if it was of his own volition or the Light of Destruction willed him to do it. But because he took Destiny Hero Plasma, his boss monster is Destiny Hero Plasma. Kazar. Kazar was a North Academy student that dueled somewhere I can't remember. He played Zoa deck and he upgraded it into Metal Zoa. Metal Zoa was his ultimate boss monster. Lorenzo. Lorenzo played a Bez deck, which, oh no, I learned about this recently on one of my live streams. Bez stands for big, oh no, it's big something. It's like a big UFO thing, but I can't remember what his boss monster was now. I think it was Big Core was the strongest Bez monster that he had in the deck. And fun fact, they're getting more support recently. That's just like something that's happening. That's kind of cool. Maitre D. Maitre D played a wine deck because if you've got a deck, you just base it on what your name is kind of thing. So with his wine deck, his ultimate boss monster was Big Vintage Magna Mutton. It's wine. What are you going to do? Mathematica. He was a math duelist, so he played a math monster. Transistor Warrior. If we didn't want to give it to a monster, I think Fatal Abacus also works, but yeah, I think the monster's fine. Howard X Miller. Howard X Miller played a mill deck. Did you see what they did there? Mill deck. He played a mill deck basically, and his ultimate boss monster in that was his Trap Sloozer, which combined really well with his monster register. These two things work really well to help him go for the win. Missy. Missy is the insect duelist of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. You can think of her as the Weevil Underwood, if you will. She had a boss monster called Insect Princess, which she based all of her deck around, like boosting it up. Fun fact, this just randomly came to me saying that she's the only bug duelist. Jesse Anderson, fun fact, in the original Yu-Gi-Oh! GX manga, played a bug deck, I'm pretty sure. It's kind of interesting how much different the manga is to the anime. Damon. Damon was the monkey man, not monkey because there's a real monkey we're going to see a little bit later, but he was the monkey man that went into the forest and became like a Tarzan type deal, and he stood under a waterfall and threw his cards into the waterfall, and he learned eventually how to get the perfect draw every single time. So I think this guy actually has the miracle draw ability. So it only makes sense that his boss card was Miracle Draw, which if you just guess the top card of your deck, you profit from it. So yeah, Miracle Draw for Damon. Wheeler. Remember that monkey I was talking about earlier? Well, there was a monkey duelist named after Joey Wheeler because I think the monkey escaped from like Kaiba Corp or something. So Kai was like, I'll name that monkey Wheeler. That's pretty funny. His boss monster in his monkey deck was Berserk Gorilla. Dimitri. Dimitri was a copycat duelist. So whoever he copies the deck of, whatever their boss monster is his boss monster. He copied Crowler, so Ancient Gear Golem was his boss, but obviously he's most known for copying Yami Yugi's deck. And Yami Yugi had a lot of powerful cards in his deck, but I think the biggest one, of course, the Blackluster Soldier, Envoy of the Beginning, said to be banned in tournaments and things like that, and didn't even know if Yugi really played this card. Yeah, this was the ultimate boss monster for Dimitri / Yami Yugi's post Duel Monsters deck, I guess. Para and Dox. You remember Para and Dox from the original Duel Monsters series? They were playing a Gate Guardian deck. They're still at it, even in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. So their boss monster is the Gate Guardian, a combination of Sanga of the Thunder, Suijin of the Water. No, they're just called Suijin and Kazijin. Those three. But it actually has an ultimate form. So when this card is destroyed, they can get out their true new boss monster, Dark Guardian, which is the last card they have in the field before they lose, but it's the most powerful card that they had. Miss Dorothy, the lady that sells Yu-Gi-Oh! Booster packs and the dinner lady, I think she is, at Duel Academy. She plays one card, Marshmallow. That's it. Duel Academy Examiner. Oof, we're really scraping the bottom of the barrel here. This was one of the Duel Examiners from, I think, the first episode or something. We only see him play Big Shield Gardener and Gear Golem Moving Fortress as part of his Examinee deck. So, one of these is your boss monster, I guess. Dr. Einstein. Dr. Einstein played a science deck. I think he forsaked luck. He's like, luck just has no place in maths. It's all about results and formulas and stuff. And then Jaden disproved it with like Miracle Fusion or something like that. But his boss monster was Brain Dragon. He's like an Einstein duelist. That only makes sense. Brain Dragon. Maximilian Pegasus. Another legacy character that popped up in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. Obviously played a Toon deck. He had Toon Dark Magician Girl. I guess this is his only original Toon boss monster. But he took the Ancient Gear Golem and Toonified it. So I'd say Toon Ancient Gear Golem is his true ultimate boss monster, really. However, I also like Comic Hand. I think Comic Hand is a really good card. Oh, Toon Kingdom's also good. There's quite a few cards you can put as his boss card here. Pierre the Gambler. What deck will Pierre the Gambler play? He'll play a Gamble deck. Well, it's Gamble Angel Bunny, which is the card that facilitates damage in his deck by being lucky with coin flips, and the Sand Gambler, which destroys opponents' monsters through being lucky as well. Elroy Prescott. Elroy Prescott is a wannabe Elvis Presley impersonator, so he plays a dance-themed deck. His boss monster is Goblin Dancers. He plays 3 of them, I think, and that's the only thing we see him put on the field. 3 Goblin Dancers. That's his ultimate boss monster. Why not? Slade Princeton. Slade is the older brother of Chaz. They were trying to teach Chaz a lesson, so they made a bet with him saying you can beat us with low-level monsters or something. So he comes in with, I think he has like a parallel rare deck in the original Japanese. I have to go back and watch it, but he plays really powerful cards, and his ultimate boss monster, I would say, is King Dragon, which is just like a fusion monster, but he did play a lot of high-level, high-attack monsters throughout his deck. Princess Rose. I quite like this character. I feel like she should have had another episode. I thought she was kind of cool. She is a princess. She believes that there's a frog out there she can kiss and turn into her charming prince. So she plays a frog deck, Des Frog, and the ultimate boss monster of her deck is a fusion of her 3 frogs, which make Des Frog, D3S Frog, which is just the big version of it. It's kind of cool. I don't know. I'd like to have seen more of her. Harrington Rosewood. This was the tennis episode. Plays a tennis deck. He plays loads of cards with ace in his deck, I'm pretty sure. Or balls. They have to be a ball. Like Mystical Shine Ball is something that he plays. But his ultimate boss card, it's hard to say, but he has a card called Deuce, which it's something to do with you can automatically win the duel if something happens with this card. I can't remember off the top of my head.
And here's how it works. From now on, each of us can only attack with 1 monster during our battle phase. You win by being first to damage the other twice in a row.
Franz. Franz was the dude that had the fake Winged Dragon of Ra. So the Winged Dragon of Ra is his ultimate boss monster, but you shouldn't be using fake cards, Franz. Very bad. Fonda Fontaine. Fonda Fontaine was the nurse for Duel Academy, and she became like evil. She got like, I forgot why she became evil in the alternate world dimension. She got ghoulified, I think. She played a reverse burn deck, which is actually pretty sick. If you would heal, you do damage instead. So her boss monster was actually Nurse Reficule, the Fallen one, which reversed healing into damage, which was actually a really good strategy. Adrian Gecko. Bro sacrificed his girlfriend so he could get a trading card. How embarrassing. So when we first meet Adrian, he's playing a Cloudian deck, and the best monster he has in his Cloudian deck is his boss monster, Cloudian Eye of the Typhoon. It's just big, strong monster. His ultimate deck later, he gets fog cards, like his Cloudian's upgraded to fogs. His best card is Fog King. This is his ultimate boss monster. He gets equipped with a sword card and becomes very, very strong. But then he gets the Exodia cards. So it then becomes Exodius, the Ultimate Forbidden Lord. I think these 2 decks are merged together, actually, if I remember correctly. He plays a Fog deck and Exodia deck. So yeah, Exodius, the Ultimate Forbidden Lord, is also his boss monster. You could throw Exodia in there as well if you wanted to, but Exodius, the Ultimate Forbidden Lord. Gorisuke. Gorisuke is that kid that Cyrus was going to attack into with Power Bond, and then Zayn had to come in and step in saying like, no, bro had Spellbinding Circle face down. You'd have embarrassed the entire bloodline if you'd attacked and had to pay him off. The only card we see on his field is Gearfried the Iron Knight, and of course he had that set Spellbinding Circle, but that's his ultimate boss monster. Oh yeah, we're getting everyone here. Gravekeeper's Chief. Gravekeeper's Chief played a Gravekeeper deck, had great cards in his deck like Necro Valley, but obviously Gravekeeper's Chief is his ultimate boss monster. Lucian Grimley. I forget the lore on this one. He had like a Grim Reaper card, like a spooky Grim Reaper card. But I think he had the power of like he could predetermine cards. I forgot what the ability is. And his ultimate card was Slash Draw because he could correctly guess where cards were or something. I forget how it worked. But then when Slash Draw failed, he would go to his backup boss card, Invincible Demise Lord. So this would be his true boss monster. Yeah, Slash Draw had the ability to send cards from the top of your deck to the grave equal to the number of other cards on the field. Draw a card and reveal it. If the card is Slash Draw, sent to the grave, destroy all of the cards on the field, and inflict 1,000 damage to your opponent for each card destroyed and sent to the graveyard this way. And this card can't be negated, so yeah, it was very strong. Serena. Serena is Sartorius's sister. She played a mirror deck. Her ultimate boss monster isn't actually a mirror, it's Dark Creator, which is pretty strong, let you summon monsters from the graveyard. I'd also throw in a card called Infinite Fiend Mirror, because Dark Creator would get multiplied into a bunch of other Dark Creators, and that's just a devastating thing to have in your opponent's side of the field. All these 3k attack monsters, woofed. Sartorius. Sartorius played an Arcana Force deck based on whether they basically coin flips, but in the show it's either right side up or upside down, I think, is how they say it. But He has 3 boss monsters I'm going to give it to. The first one is his original Arcana Force cards. Arcana Force XXI, the World. This card let you skip your opponent's turn. Crazy strong. The following is his 2 EX Arcana Force cards, and these are Arcana Force X, the Light Ruler, at the season where he first appears, and then Arcana Force X, the Dark Ruler, towards the final season. Sator. Sator was one of the teachers at Duel Academy. He played a spicy deck, a spice deck. His ultimate boss monster, funny one, it's Curry Pot and Curry Fiend Rue. Curry Pot summons Curry Fiend Rue, but it's all about getting cards banished. Curry Fiend Rue gains, what was its effect again? It gains 200 attack for each spice card in the graveyard, and then 300 attack for each monster that has been removed from play. You get cards removed from play through Curry Pot because any monster sent to the graveyard is removed from play instead with this card on the field. And during either player's turn, if Carrot Man, Potato Man, and Onion Man that you own are removed from play, by this card's effect, you can remove all monsters on the field from play to special summon Curry Fiend Rue from your hand or deck. It's actually a pretty strong combo. I would like to see more of these in the real world. Mr. Huffington. This is Chumley's dad. Now, some of you might think, oh yeah, he played, what was it? A hot sauce deck. No, that was the dub. He played a sake deck, an alcohol deck. It's called a Dizzy deck. His boss cards are 1, a card called Flipping the Table, and 2, a card called Hot Sauce Bottle in the dub, or 1 bottle of sake in the original Japanese. And basically, Flip the Table destroys all cards in the field, or spells and traps, I think it is. And then every time the sakes are destroyed, it deals 500 damage. He just replenishes them and then does it over again to do 1500, 1500, 1500 to go for game. Braun, Mad King of Dark World. Now, his boss monster in his Dark World deck was Rainbow Overlord of Dark World. It's a strong monster, don't get me wrong, but he wanted to use super polymerization, which he wasn't able to successfully make, to fuse with Jaden's side of the field to actually make a monster called Colorless Chaos King of Dark World. He never achieved this, but it's safe to assume that it was either in his deck or it would have been fabricated if he managed to do it. But yeah, I guess Rainbow technically. Now, I was going to do the rest of the Dark World gang, like Gold and Silver, Chaos Sorcerer as well. There's a bunch of other ones. I can't bother. I can't bother to the Dark World people. I've got so many characters, that'll do. Truman. Truman was the herald of the final villain of the Yu-Gi-Oh series, the Darkness. He actually possessed a bunch of people and became a bunch of different duelists. The first duel he has is at his weakest. He played a weird Dark World-ish kind of deck, and his boss monster was Zer Knight of Dark World. Version 2 of him, his boss monster was Meteor Black Dragon. Version 3 of him, he played a much better version of his deck, and it was actually 5-headed dragon. He managed to get 2 of these out at the same time, which I thought was really impressive. After that, a dude called Daigo gets possessed, and he was playing a Horus deck. So his ultimate boss monster was Horus the Black Flame Dragon level 8. And then finally, after this, we have the final villain of the series, the Darkness. I got the Darkness into another video for this month for Halloween. I think I've done very well. I've milked that character dry. His ultimate boss monster is, of course, Darkness Neosphere in his Darkness themed deck, named after himself, the Darkness, because he's the embodiment of darkness. But also, I'm going to say his 0 to Infinity and all the cards in between, Darkness 1, 2, and 3. Those are his boss cards as well, because, yeah, Darkness Neosphere facilitates 0 and Infinity as well as part of its effect. So I actually think 0 to Infinity is his real boss cards. Oh, there was one more character. I just thought about it in the middle of this. The dude that plays against Sartorius, Prince Ojin, that's it. Satellite Cannon. Satellite Cannon was his ultimate boss monster. That was every single Yu-Gi-Oh! GX character's ultimate boss monsters done, apart from the few Dark World characters I come up to do. I'll tell you what, you guys can do the rest of the Dark World cast. Please subscribe. This just took me? An hour? Thank you all for watching. You've all been absolutely awesome. Have a great day. Catch you later.